G'day guys. I recently had a game where I was able to take down 5 Meteors, including this guy. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to give you some tips for engaging Meteors in your ME262. Now we all know the Meteor is the most elusive fighter in Enlisted. It turns way faster and can climb better than the ME262, but it is easily outclassed by the ME262 when it comes to firepower. So in order to be competitive against the Meteor, we need to be aggressive with our guns while at the same time denying the Meteor any opportunity to use its manoeuvrability against us. And hopefully I can give you some guidance on how to do that in this video. So I'd already been in the game for a while and I knew there was a Meteor in the air. And when I died, I was fortunate enough to see both the enemy jet and the attack plane on the load screen while I was waiting to spawn. Once in game, I spotted the Meteor and started to follow it over the point. I wanted to take out the tank I spotted earlier, but somebody else beat me to it, so I decided to go for this APC instead. I then moved in behind the Meteor and got set up for this low aspect shot. The first tip that I want to share with you is that when I'm lining up for a shot like this, I don't aim directly at the lead indicator and simply pull the trigger, but rather I sweep the gun sight over the target as I take my shots. I usually fire in bursts, but because I was taking a shot from directly behind the Meteor, I held the trigger down as I swept across the target. I actually prefer to hold my fire until the Meteor is turning because the target area is much larger and easier to hit, and I'll show you what I mean by that a little bit later in the game. Now after downing the Meteor, I simply headed back to the ammo point and got ready for my next pass. Coming in for my second run, I spot a transport plane as well as another Meteor flying over the point. I decided to go for the transport plane first and hopefully take it out before it drops its troops. I then moved up behind the Meteor, which would soon be starting its turn, and that gives me a perfect opportunity to explain how I target a turning aircraft. When targeting the Meteor like this, I find it works best if I put my gun sight in front of the lead indicator and fire off a burst as my gun sight passes across it. I quickly reposition the gun sight back in front of the lead indicator and fire off a burst again. I repeat this as many times as I can while the jet is turning, which if I'm lucky will be about 3 or 4 times. Using this technique will save you wasting bullets, and I also think it improves your chances of hitting the target, especially if you're someone who has a bit of lag in their game. Coming in for my third attack, I spot another aircraft approaching the point. This is the third Meteor, and the pilot makes the mistake of pulling vertical to make his turn after his attack. I strongly advise not using this technique for turning any aircraft if you're over the point, as it leaves you high and slow, making you easy to see and easy to shoot out of the sky. After getting this third Meteor, I decided to resupply my ammunition so I had a full ammo belt for my next attack. Now at this point in the game, I decided to mix up my attack run to make it harder for the enemy pilots to spot me, and at the same time make it easier for me to see them and shoot them down. As I reached the ammo point, I decided to head around to the left a bit more than usual. This would move me onto the flank of any incoming aircraft, making it harder for them to spot me and easier for me to see and attack them as they approach the point. Once I made my attack, my plan was to stay low and fast and just watch the skies for a few seconds to make sure the skies were clear. Once I knew it was safe, I would pull up to a high altitude where I could fly back to the ammo supply point and scan for targets below me as I went. On my return journey, I spot an enemy attack plane and can dive in for the attack. Because I'm diving in from a higher altitude, my speed will increase and I risk overshooting. To prevent the overshoot, I choose to perform a rolling scissor behind the enemy plane. This would effectively slow me down and prevent me from overshooting and put me in a favourable position where I can attack again. This is a technique that I use often, especially when flying a faster aircraft, and often think of it as an offensive rolling scissor. It's a very handy manoeuvre that I think everybody should have in their bag of tricks, as it's easy to do and most of the time the enemy pilot won't even know where you are or what you're doing behind them. After this, I return to the ammo resupply point and then head back in for another attack. As I do, I check my 10 o'clock position to make sure there's no enemy plane coming in as I approach the point. I was unable to spot any targets, so I decided to just drop the bomb beside the point and support my team. Once again, I stay low after my attack and spot an enemy plane as it approaches the point. I drop the takeoff flaps briefly to make my turn sharper so I can get back and attack this plane before it makes it to the point. And as you may have noticed then, you can drop your flaps pretty hard in the ME262 and it actually handles it really well. I often use my flaps pretty aggressively and I don't think I've torn them yet. In fact, the ME262 is the jet that I've flown the most and I can't think of a time where I've torn the flaps on it. So don't be scared to go hard when using the flaps because you're going to need every advantage you can get to make up for its poor handling. After this, I head back for more ammo and then swing out to the left again and head in for another flanking attack. There were no targets highlighted on my way in, but I spot this tank at the last second and unfortunately I released my bomb just a little too late and ended up missing the target. I fly past the point again and pull up just as I had planned and search for aircraft as I return to resupply. I spot a transport plane as it comes in and manage to take it down with the squad still on board, which is always a bonus. I then pull high into a turn and then drop my altitude to pick up some speed as I know enemy planes will be spawning behind me. I do a quick shoulder check and then check the scoreboard to see how the team is doing. It sounds like there is another jet in the air, and sure enough, when I look behind me, there it is. Immediately, I drop my flaps and my bomb to increase my turn performance. I brake hard and try to jink his shots, but I take a hit. I then pull into some rolling scissors because that's about all I can do in this situation. During the rolling scissor, I try to make sure that I'm dropping my flaps on the way down and raising them again on the way up, and keep my throttle at maximum to minimise any energy losses. I know I won't be able to outmaneuver this guy, so try to keep moving and drop my throttle as well to try and force an overshoot. At this moment though, I look back and notice he's moving away and manage to spot him as he leaves just here. And if you didn't spot him, here it is again. I don't know how I saw it during the game, but that red marker just caught my eye. After this, I did one more roll just to make sure he wasn't separating so he could come back for another attack. I then turn and head back towards the ammunition resupply point. Now I want to pause just quickly and show you how effective the rolling scissors are from the enemy pilot's point of view and talk about why the Meteor did not try and finish me off. When the Meteor spawned, it had 720 rounds and used up about a third of those taking down this transport plane as it approached the point. He then strafes the point using up more ammunition and dropped only one of his 2 bombs. I think strafing the point in this way is a huge waste of ammo, and I usually don't strafe unless I can actually see enemy soldiers on the ground. After attacking the point, he then comes after me, and at this point has 360 bullets and is still carrying 1 bomb, even though it doesn't show in this replay. He starts shooting at me from a long way off, instead of waiting to get closer for a cleaner shot. By this point, I've seen him and have started my defensive flying. He tries to follow me but chooses not to roll with me in the rolling scissor, which I think is a mistake. He follows me on the second roll, and as I complete my third roll, he decides to disengage and return to attack the point instead. If he had held fire and followed me into those rolling scissors, I think there's a good chance that I would have bled my energy and started to slow down, making myself an easier target for him to pick off. But with low ammo and carrying 1 bomb still, he decided to disengage and return to the point to drop his bomb. So from this example, you can see that the rolling scissors are a great defensive option, even if they feel clunky and slow. Rolling is one thing that the ME262 does well, and if you're somebody who doesn't use rolling scissors, I would strongly recommend you start learning them. This is not the first Meteor that I've shaken off using rolling scissors. I do remember another fight in particular where I had a Meteor on my tail and all I could do was roll and defend, and the Meteor ended up using up all of their ammunition trying to hit me and had to break off and go back and resupply. He then came back for a second round and I did the same thing again. If you're interested, I can put that video up. It's a long fight and goes for about 5 minutes, and I think it's my longest engagement to date. So back to this game, I resupplied my ammo and headed back to the point where I caught up with our friend. They were flying in to attack the point, giving me a perfect opportunity to take a snapshot as they passed my nose. With snapshots like this, it's hugely important that you hit your mark because if you miss, you're most likely going to end up in a rate fight and the Meteor will have the upper hand. I turned to give chase, but as it turned out, the snapshot was enough to cut off the wing and the pilot bailed out shortly after. I headed back to resupply and again turned slightly wide and to the left. As I approach the point, we can see another enemy attack plane as well as a transport plane. The transport plane hadn't reached the point yet, so I went for them first. And as you can see here, I'm going to use the same burst fire technique that I mentioned earlier to make sure I bring them down. I then swoop in behind this attack plane. I drop my bomb to improve my turn and get some good hits as I pass its tail. I then dive down and wide of the point to avoid any aircraft spawning behind me. And sure enough, another Meteor appears. I still have plenty of rounds left in my cannon, so I decide to give chase. I switch to combat flaps to improve my turn. I try to get in a position behind him so I can close the distance and take some shots. Now I don't think they've spotted me yet, they're just flying very erratically, so I need to be careful not to miss my shot. I try to pull ahead of them again, and I'm a little bit slow, but I managed to get a lucky hit right in the end, and that's enough to knock them out of the sky, making it 5 Meteors so far. My ally is asking me to watch out for Meteors, which is fine. I will try to provide some cover for them while they're in the sky. And just like that, another one appears, and I don't have time to type anything, so I just start spamming random words. I missed my first shot, but probably have enough for 2 more attempts if I'm careful. It doesn't appear that they have spotted me, they're just chasing easy points as the game comes to an end. I try this one last shot but miss just as the game finishes. We'll check out the scoreboard now, but if you picked up some tips today, hit like and consider subscribing for more enlisted flying guides. Drop a comment if you've got any questions, or if you want to see some longer dogfights like the one I mentioned earlier, and I'll put it up in a future video. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one.